right, thank you for everyone joining us this evening. Tonight we have with us Meryem Dede. She is the founder of Tideship Justice Project, a Delaware nonprofit that works on criminal legal system and good governance reforms. Tideship Justice Project houses the Campaign to End Debtors Prison, which started in 2019 as a volunteer group working to decriminalize poverty in Delaware. Since CEDP began its work, Delaware has stopped suspending driver's licenses for unpaid fines and fees, eliminated over half a dozen fees, including one for public defense, and published a legislative report with broad agency support recommending further fines and fees reform. CDP also participated in a cities and counties for fines and fees justice cohort to reform parking and water billing inequalities in Delaware's largest city, Wilmington. The group's work has so far led to a reduction in parking ticket costs, went from $40 to $25 per ticket, the overhauling of the city's ticket appeal process, the elimination of foreclosures for water debt, and the funding of a utility payment assistance program. Before starting with Tideship Justice Project, Meryem was a staff attorney at Juvenile Law Center, where she worked on fines and fees reform as part of their debt-free justice campaign. And prior to that, Meryem was a public defender for the state of Delaware. She lives in North Wilmington with her partner, kids, cats, and two fish.
Down to one fish, unfortunately.
Oh! And with that, I will turn it over to my partner, Meryem.
Yeah, I did want to start off just by saying founder is not quite right. It's co-founder with Lynn. And we've got I know I think we've got a couple board members too that are a part of your all's group. I know Dave McBride is on our board. Lynn's obviously on our board. And I saw that Kim Eppenheimer just joined, who we work so much. We love Friendship House and work with them a fair amount too. So it's great to be in a room of friends. I put together, so I was just gonna kind of talk casually, hopefully, about the work that we do at Tide Shift and kind of how we came to be. I did put together slides because I can't help myself. I love a slideshow. So give me 1 second and I will get them up and going. Okay, can you guys see that? A
Yeah.
slightly blurry version of our logo. Sorry about that. Our mission is to decrease the role and size of Delaware's carceral and criminal legal systems and to advocate for fair and responsive government practices. And we use advocacy, education, and litigation. And I just want to pause for a second on that mission. It's a little academic and a little wordy, I think, because that's how Lynn and I are. But really, our goal, I think, is unique in that it is, at least in Delaware, in that we really are aimed at while we have projects that we work on, and some are about harm reduction within the criminal justice system. Some are about other facets of the criminal legal system. The ultimate goal is to reduce the size of the criminal legal system and the incarceration system in Delaware. So our origin story starts from the campaign to end debtors prison. I know that I've talked to some of you in this group before about the campaign to end debtors prison. It started in 2019. As Lynn kind of said in the intro, it was originally totally volunteer led. And we ended up working on a bill that passed in 2022 and then another set of bills that passed in 2024. And yeah, let's see. I got some graphics for you. So,
Before you leave the campaign to end Denner's prison, I'll just jump in. I should have done it when you were acknowledging others, but Mike Grenade here what has been involved with the campaign to Debtors Prison from the very early days when we were meeting in the basement of Sam. And we also have Tanya here, who has been very involved in all of that work too. So I just wanted to acknowledge both of them here as well.
thank you, Lynn. I remember seeing both of you when we started, but of course, as soon as I went to screen share, I don't have any faces anymore. But yeah, I think lots of good folks in this group. Um, So basically, we worked on all of these things as volunteers. When I first started working with the Campaign to End Debtors Prison, it was when I was a public defender, and that's when it inspired my work with it. We had the bill in 2022. Part of that bill was a bunch of actual changes that helped people, but also the creation of a study group. The study group met in 2023 and came out with a final report of additional changes. Some of those changes passed into law in 2024 with a set of three bills, and currently we have two additional bills, HB 132 and 133, which are again inspired from the recommendations of that study group. Um, but it basically in doing that organizing work, work begets work. And we saw all these opportunities to do more and more things and to really dig in on what we were working on. And frankly, had a foundation come forward and say, would you like to make this an actual job? Would you like to have this be a formal thing? I think when they first reached out, they didn't realize we were just a group of volunteers that had no bank account and didn't have nonprofit status. And honestly, when they first reached out, we basically said we don't know what we would do with any money. But anyway, fast forward, we founded Tide Shift just a year and a half ago. And since then, we've continued the work of the fines and fees group. We are advocating for those two bills I mentioned. If you want to get involved, put your email in the chat and I'll plug you into our listserv so you can get our updates and be as involved or as uninvolved as you would like. But we also had the time to dedicate to other issues, primarily within the criminal legal system. But fines and fees and a lot of the work we had done had also we'd put in our mission that we wanted to work on good governance as well, because we saw when we were working on fines and fees and also when we were working on legislation that there were these broader issues that the system, even broader than the criminal legal system, was broken in certain ways. There we came into working on fines and fees because of the moral dilemma of how cruel it was to ask people who had no money to pay money. But there was also a governance issue and like a conservative talking point issue of it being an inefficient way to run government, and that by funding government through the criminal legal system, we have government essentially wanting crimes to happen because that's the only way they can balance their budget. And as long as we have a government that's dependent on bad behavior, we have a broken system. And so we had also kind of had this opportunity by forming Tide Shift to broaden our scope. We organized with other partners last year an ex-prisoner lobby day that was specifically focused on people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated and what they want to happen in terms of changes in the law. I'll say this picture is just a fraction of the people that participated. We had over 100 people participate in this lobby day. A vast majority of them were family members or people who had been previously incarcerated. I was a part of a group where I feel very lucky that we had two people who were formerly incarcerated, and they actually brought up on video with legislators, friends of theirs who were still incarcerated, who talked live from Vaughan Prison to legislators about the law changes they wanted. And that's certainly something I had never seen happen in Dover. So this we felt was really important because so often when we're talking about the criminal legal system, it's people who haven't been in it who are saying how things should happen. And there's so much that's in the weeds and in the details of how this works that unless you've lived it in some respect, you miss it. And so we really liked this. We're doing it again this year, May 6th. You don't have to be formally incarcerated personally to participate in it. We welcome all participants. Um, so if you'd like to get involved, join our listserv. We also did a lot of work this past year on police reform. So, our belief and our goal, if our goal is to decrease the size and role of the criminal legal system, The criminal legal system shouldn't be something that's this overpowering, like scary thing on the lives of people where they're thinking about it constantly. And that's how it is for a lot of people and a lot of Delawareans. And it really starts with that arrest or pre-arrest, or even just daily interactions with law enforcement. And so it had started off with an event marking the 2-year anniversary of reforms that had passed HB 205 and 206 that created police accountability boards and were supposed to reform the police officers' Bill of Rights in certain ways, but really have not met that promise. And so it was marking the 2-year anniversary of that and looking at what had changed and what hadn't. I'll summarize it for you. Not a lot's changed. And that really led to this ongoing conversation about what policing could look like and how we get there. And we're really optimistic that in the way those conversations have gone, we've got like a slate really of changes in what policing looks like that are we think would be really beneficial to people who have to interact with the police, but frankly would be beneficial to the police as well. Um, it would be like a whole society good thing. And sorry, I think my daughter's coming for one last hug. Okay. Okay, good night, sweetie. There's just a picture of one of the town halls. We did most of them in Dover because Dover has been a flashpoint for policing and discontent in the local community about what policing looks like and how they're being treated. There's also been a lot of talk. I don't know if folks have noticed this just around. I think this is something that a lot of folks have just noticed in their daily lives, but there's been a lot of talk about an uptick in shoplifting and retail theft. And you can I think a lot of the conversation around this has been people just going to CVS and being frustrated that they can't buy shampoo without asking for someone to unlock it for them. But basically, there's been a lot of talk about what do we do about an uptick in retail crime. And a lot of that conversation has been let's increase the penalties for shoplifting. And we did an event, and there's been an ongoing task force in the legislature. But the takeaway is that shoplifting has not gone up, retail crime has not gone up. It dipped during the pandemic, but it's basically back at pre-pandemic levels. It's not up overall. It's just that when stores were closed and everyone was told to, stay home, there wasn't a lot of shoplifting. And then the other takeaway is that increasing penalties, and I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone in this group, increasing penalties for crimes does not decrease crime. The best way to decrease the amount of crime is to increase the likelihood of being caught. If people think they're going to be caught for something, they're not going to do it. But also to take away the reason that people are committing crimes. And for crimes like shoplifting, the number one reason is poverty. And so if we work on alleviating poverty, that is going to decrease retail crime, not making it a felony when it used to be when it used to be a misdemeanor or locking people up more. In fact, that will do the opposite. So hopefully that works. Um, but other areas we looked at is expungement access. I don't know if folks here have probably heard about Clean Slate and how Delaware passed Clean Slate legislation, making it so that some expungements should happen automatically. It's not happening. In the first 4 months that Clean Slate was supposed to be taking place, they were only clearing a couple hundred expungements a month, which just the backlog would take them 91 years to get through just the backlog of cases that were eligible for expungement. And I think even worrying on top of that is that for the entirety of 2025, I think I put on here SBI, State Bureau of Identification, it's state police, has refused to disclose the pace at which they are running expungements. So while we have statistics on the first 4 months that those automatic expungements were happening, we actually have no idea how many expungements happened in 2025. And then lastly, decriminalization of homelessness. There's been a surge in the unhoused population in Delaware. No news to this group, but that's also resulted in a surge in municipalities, and we think it's coming soon at the state level, a surge in trying to pass laws making it basically illegal to be homeless. Making it illegal to ask for help at the roadside, illegal to loiter, and so that's another area that we've been trying to battle and stop those things from happening. And I'll also say on the less negative front, there is also a bill pending HB 135 that would make it so that it's like a protection that you can't be arrested for life-sustaining activities while outside and in public if there is no bed for you to go to. And so just a little theory of change of kind of like where we came about these things is I think, in thinking about the work that we're doing at Tide Shift and how we go about the work, we've been trying to keep in mind that you know, I think Lynn and I both have this kind of theory that anyone who understands these issues, if we can explain it, if it can be explained to them, if anyone understands it at the level that we understand it, they'll agree with us. Um, because these are moral issues, but they're also logical issues. And people are inherently good. So I think that everything that we work on, it's things that we truly believe everyone should get on board with. If they had the knowledge to get on board with it, they would. We also think that this is a local problem. When we're talking about the criminal legal system in particular, in Delaware, we have a state criminal legal system. There is a federal system as well, but it is a drop in the bucket in terms of the number of arrests and the amount of involvement with the criminal legal system. It's all at the state level, not at the federal level. And so we think that this is a Delaware issue and it needs to be solved in a Delaware way, not in the Delaware way, but in a Delaware way. Um, we also think you can't change the system if you are the system. So, we don't currently have any government grants, and not that there's anything wrong with government grants, but we think that it's really difficult to change the system if you are beholden to it. And then we try our best to prioritize firsthand experience. I think that it matters so much what people who are living these things think about it. And there's a lot of, I think I've certainly seen situations where people have the best intentions, but if they aren't prioritizing the voices of people who are the most impacted, you can get it wrong. And I'm not perfect. I'm sure I have gotten it wrong at times, but we try to put that first because we think that that makes a really big difference. So I'll stop screen sharing. And hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but does anyone have any questions?
And some of you I muted because there was some noise in the background. So you may not have known that you're muted, and you are. So if you need help unmuting, put up your hand and I will see if I can unmute you. Roger.
Um, you were a public defender.
Yeah.
I don't see any incentives here or any ideas about how to change the public defender, how that all works. How does the public defender system work? And is there reform there that is required? I'm ignorant of anything about the public defender system, so I'll
Sure.
sit
I
with
mean,
that.
there are certainly things I would, if I ruled the world, there are things I would change. But I do think Delaware's public defender system is a little bit different from the public defender systems in other areas. So some things that are really great about the PD system in Delaware is it's organized. There is a public defender office. It's actually Office of Defense Services, and then there's an office that does conflicts, and then the public defenders. And in a lot of other jurisdictions, it is like it's the court appointing public defenders, or it's county by county, and so funding can be really unstable because it's at the state level and it's a central office. I think it doesn't have those pitfalls that our other places do. The other thing is that the public defender's office in Delaware is primarily vertical representation. So, one of the ways that PD's offices in other areas get around the high caseloads is they will have an attorney take a whole calendar and then have another attorney take another calendar and another attorney take another.
I
So, if
think you
you're the
need to explain
client,
what calendar is.
yeah, yeah. So if you're the client, when you have your first appearance in court, you're going to have one attorney. Then you're going to go back for a case review and you have another attorney. And then you go to trial and you have a whole nother attorney.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm very thankful. I've never had to do horizontal representation like that. I think it doesn't make any sense. But other places work that way, even places that are close to us. Philadelphia does their public defender's office like this. At least they, and I haven't actually checked in the last like year and a half, but they they did very recently. And Delaware does vertical representation for almost everything. So, if you're the client, when you first meet your public defender, that's who you have for the life of the case. And I think it's better outcomes, um, it's better client relationships. And you can get just a more sophisticated case because you have someone who's really digging into all the weeds from the beginning. But I think the biggest difference is just for the clients. You can call your attorney. You're not just calling the office and then they're trying to figure out who to talk to. And then I think the last thing with the PD's office, or actually a couple more things with the PD's office that are pretty good here, is the pay is much higher than in other places.
Hmm.
So this is a point of contention. For a long time, the public defender's office had pay parity with the attorney general's office. So the prosecutors were paid the same as the public defenders. The prosecutors just unionized. Now they're going to get paid more. So we'll see what happens with the public defenders. But then, hold on, I had one more thing. Oh, the other thing that I think is really good that the PD's office does is in other jurisdictions, it can be quite difficult to get a public defender. You might have to provide paperwork about your income, about like what benefits you're on in order to get a public defender. A lot of jurisdictions in Pennsylvania work this way. In Delaware, it's very simple questions. If you're unemployed, no more questions asked, you qualify. If you're a child, no questions, you qualify. Um, and there are a few other things where it gets the vast majority of people who would need a public defender just really easy, and you don't need to prove that you're unemployed. You don't need to prove that you're on whatever benefits. It just automatically qualifies you. So it's an over-inclusive office rather than under-inclusive. I'll say sometimes I had clients who should not have had a public defender. Like they definitely had the money to hire a private attorney. But I would much rather have an office that works that way than an office that is making it really difficult to get a PD and then excludes people who really need it. I think there are things I would fiddle with and change, but in terms of something that from the outside of the office, we would publicly advocate for or put research into. I did like my time there. And I'm not above criticizing places I worked. But I do think some of those like major structural issues that other public defenders' offices have, our PD's office is actually doing a good job with. And those are really those critical points that I outlined where other PD's offices, like if we were doing that here, yeah, I'd be shouting it from the rooftops. Like I think that's terrible. But we're doing most of the things right.
That's great. That's good news. I didn't know anything about that, but I'm glad that that's a good point for Delaware has done it right. And I think that's because we're a small state with three counties, that we can do something like that and have it work.
Yeah, and I'll say I think we had some good advocacy by like chief defenders in the past to make that happen. Um, but I forget when exactly. It used to be not this level of organized and like not that long ago. But they really are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Hmm. Meryem, you, this is Mike. You talked about some of the things that were passed over the last couple of years, but there's a third that still hasn't gone done. From a volunteer perspective, is there something we can do to generate some energy to get more than just 93 people?
Um, yeah. So, sorry, what was the 93 people reference? What am I missing?
Well, I think that was some of the things that passed, but weren't
Oh,
weren't expanding.
yeah, so there are two bills that are currently pending. And I'm just going to put I'm going to put the fines in the CDP website in the chat. There are two bills that are pending, and if you look at, it's actually like on the home page where it says learn more about HB 132 and HB 133. Those are the
Mhm.
two bills. And there are a bunch of things coming up. So the first one is we actually put together a report card. This is going to be coming out early next week on legislators, all the sitting legislators and how they have voted over the past 6 years on fines and fees. So it goes back through 8 different bills and really got granular. It is their committee votes, whether they co-sponsored, and their floor votes. Graded every single legislator, and that's going to be coming out next week. So I encourage you to, look up your legislator and see what their grade is. And if they have an A, send them an email thanking them. And if they don't, send them an email asking them to do better. One of the things we did is we did grade every legislator on whether they are currently a co-sponsor of the pending bills.
Oh, that's good.
One of the things we have found is, and I think this is like I was saying, Lynn and I never did legislation before we did the CDP stuff. Like we like went into this not knowing anything about Dover, Legislative Hall, bills, like all of this was new to us. Um, and so if there's anything you guys want to work on, in fact, I'd heard about something that this group maybe wants to work on, which I am so excited about. But you can do it. Like it doesn't take, you don't have to have prior knowledge. You can do it. But what was I saying? Yeah, one of the things we found is, we're a super majority Democratic state, and for like progressive issues, that can make it seem like you should be able to pass it. But it's not that simple in terms of political lines. It doesn't necessarily mean that's how someone's going to vote. The bills that we work on generally have fiscal notes, and so there's often this concern about like, okay, we like it, but how are we going to pay for it? And we found that a lot of legislators that we've had conversations with might say they're going to support a bill, and then it's hard for it to get a vote
Mm,
because secretly they don't want to publicly vote for it.
mm,
And so we've been strategically, very specifically asking legislators to co-sponsor because it's the only way that you can have someone publicly commit to how they're going to vote. Otherwise it's just a conversation and maybe we post to Facebook saying they said they would vote yes on this, but that doesn't mean really anything. Like we can't take that to the bank in the way that we can a co-sponsorship. So if you look at the bills, they actually have really long co-sponsorship lists because we've done this. But one of the things is we graded everyone on whether they're co-sponsoring the current bills. So that's the best thing you can do is if your legislator is not a co-sponsor on either bill, send them an email and ask them to be. But we also
right.
have some organized things coming up. So, like I mentioned, our fiscal notes and fiscal impact is often the biggest talking point with these bills when we're talking to legislators. And this is another thing, Lynn and I just learned this over the course of the last few years that budget cycles are a year-round thing. So I had that picture I'd shown about a group of us that had gone to, it was in November, and it was the hearings where state agencies present their budget requests to the governor. No one goes to those. They're public, but nobody goes except for us. We all went. And we went for 2 different days, and we had over a dozen people at each day. And it was great. And everyone gave public comment, but it made a splash because no one goes to those. The public doesn't really participate in those meetings. Um, on February 19th, we're going to go to a joint finance committee meeting, and that is when the agencies are presenting their budget requests to the legislators. And so they're repeating some of the requests they made to the governor, except at this point, when that meeting will be happening, the governor will have already put forward his recommended budget. And so they'll be comparing the agency request to that recommended budget. And so we're going to go to the one that's for the courts when the courts are making their budget requests. And again, the idea is that you show up en masse, we all say we want these bills funded, and then we thank them and we get out of there. And a couple people go to the Joint Finance Committee hearings, but almost no one. And that's why we've really marked these out because these bills have a fiscal impact. This is what legislators tell us is the holdup on them. And no one goes. Once it becomes May or June and you go to these legislative committee hearings, it's so many people and the whole building is just really packed and there are all these like paid lobbyists everywhere. And this we'd kind of strategized is maybe one of the best ways that we can really get their ear early on. Um, so mark your calendar, come February 19th.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll say for folks, if anyone wants to go down, I would gladly meet you in the church parking lot and we can carpool down together. We have a box full of nice yellow t-shirts that say poverty is not a crime. You can put one of those t-shirts on with us if you want. And when it's time to actually give public comment in that hearing, you can speak from your heart and tell them why it's important to you. You can read off a script and some of our talking points, or you can just stand up for 10 seconds and say, I really believe in what they're doing. Please vote for it. It can be as simple as that, but just showing up to let them know why you're there and that you want these bills to be funded makes a difference. So
I
if anyone can join us February 19th, you can carpool from the church parking lot.
And it's really not as scary as it sounds like. You guys can do it. We send out talking points whenever we're doing one of these, and it usually has like this, we want you to say this sentence verbatim. And that's the ask, fund these bills, and you can just read it verbatim. And then we include talking points. So if people want to expound from there, they can. But it's powerful and important, even just to stand up and say the one sentence. And we will be sending out information about how to participate virtually or in person. In person is a little better. Um, it makes an impact. They're not a lot, it's a small room and there aren't that many people that go to these. So it does make an impact, but virtual still really matters too.
I want to thank you for helping to take some of the terror out of the thought of doing this by making it more of a collaborative community event with support. So thank you. Thank you for that.
I'll say we haven't hammered out all the details of how we're going to do this one, but in the past, and we haven't talked about it, but I was anticipating we would do this. In the past, we usually do like a meetup beforehand too. We'll have like donuts, you can practice your talking points, meet people. So yeah, I mean, I think these things are better when they feel a little bit fun, you know? So it should feel a little bit fun. And I think the legislators, they don't ask questions either. There's no like hot seat. And we've had several people where I mean, myself included, where they gave their first public comment as a part of this work and then keep coming back. And yeah, it gets easier.
I loved last year we had someone who came just because she said she just wanted to see what it was like and she was just going to watch. And she watched the first few as gave public comment. And then she's like, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
And she got up and did it. And it's great.
I want to go back to the public defender's question for just a minute because we've had Kevin O'Connell speak two different times to this group. He's the head of the Office of Defense Services. I guess he still is. In any case, his first class with us was in August of 2023, and the title was Not Your Father's Public Defender. And it was a wonderful program because it took what we think of as a public defender or as the system, and he explained in very personal terms, real terms of people's involvement with the public defender's office. And it was a really powerful program. The link to that recording is available in our Google Doc, accessible through Westminster's website. If you weren't able to watch it at the time, I really recommend that you take a look. It was a very clear exposition and a really very hope-filled kind of presentation of the work of the Public Defender's Office of Defense Services. He also did another one on the death penalty in the Constitution, and that was entitled Killing in the Name of Justice. And
Mhm.
that one happened to be in April of 24, and that too was a really powerful program. So again, we have access to the recordings of all of these, and I encourage you, if you're interested, to take a look.
I might go back and look at those. Kevin's a great speaker and a great person.
Yep. Let me ask you a question. Oh, if I may. Um, the expungement process, why in the world is it stuck in molasses? I mean, what are the obstacles? What's keeping that from happening? I know, let's see, Jane Palmer and Lucy Peebles and Susan Badorf and I went to the first um, community forum after the legislation passed, and there were hundreds of people there and a lot of hope, a lot of excitement about the possibility, of expunging criminal histories that didn't serve any beneficial purpose and were really preventing people from moving on with their lives. So what happened?
I'll tell you what we have been told, and then I'll tell you that it's total bullshit. So we have been told that the holdup is two things. And I'll say like we have been meeting with the director of research for Governor Meyer's office, among others. So we're hearing this directly from the people in charge. That the holdup is two things with the State Bureau of Identification. One is the identifying of who is eligible for expungements. Currently, Delgis, which is the like mainframe background check system, runs a program to see who's eligible for automatic expungements. They then send it to State Bureau of Identification, run through State Police. State Police then manually goes over it, the exact same thing. Then they do the expungement. So that's one of the holdups. Is something that Delgis is doing automated. SBI has a person doing manually. The other holdup is that the statute said that expungement can be, actually I had this. Hold on. I'm gonna give you the actual statute language. Expungement means that all law enforcement agency records and court records relating to a case in which an expungement is granted, including any electronic records, and here's the key part, are destroyed, segregated, or placed in custody of the State Bureau of Identification. So destroyed, segregated, or placed in custody. And SBI has been interpreting that as they must destroy. Even though the plain language of the statute clearly says they can do one of those three things, they have said we must destroy it, and destroying it takes a really long time because they're physically shredding documents and getting rid of microfilm in whatever way you get rid of microfilm. Some of these records are really old, and it's just a lot of stuff to physically destroy. So those are the two things that we are told are the holdup, but I think there is no excuse for the holdup. And I think it's unconscionable how long this has been and the lack of transparency to the public. So we are in the early stages, so it's a little like early to talk about, but we are planning something for April of this year, which is it's Second Chances Month. Because while was a lot of heyday about clean slate and this great thing happening, it's been, a year and a half now, and it's not actually happening. And that hasn't really been a part of the public discourse. And I think a lot of people, looks like you, and probably everyone here, would be pretty outraged to hear about how slow the rollout has been, especially because Delaware is not the first state to do this. So other states have created a truly automated process, and then they're just expunging thousands of records. And we've got this trickle process. And I'll say part of what really just irks me about the whole thing is while the automatic expungements are not happening at the rate they should be, what is happening is people become eligible for expungements. If they don't get the automatic expungement, they can apply for an expungement, and it costs them about $150 to do that. And so if you have $150 and you have the time and the wherewithal, you can still get the same expungement you could through the automated process, except
Mhm.
most people can't do that.
Right. Right.
So what can we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say there's like a group of us that's been meeting about what we can do, and our major thing has been we think that like inside baseball talks are not where it's going to happen. We think we need public outrage. So come be a part of the public outrage.
We're good
And
at
ultimately,
that.
who's in charge is Governor Meyer.
Mm.
I'm
It's
getting
it's
better and better
faceless.
at public outrage every day, so it's become
Yeah.
a thing. I'm sorry,
How do
Jane, I
we
interrupted you.
mm, how do we find this report card that you have prepared? How do we find that? Where is that?
It's not
Oh,
public yet.
oh,
So
okay.
I think Jane, I know you're on the CDP listserv. Next week is when we're releasing it. I'm
Okay.
happy to tell anyone the preliminary grades for their legislators here. But next week is when we're releasing it. So it's going to be on CDP and Tide Shift's social media. We're going to be doing a press release. So, maybe you'll read about it in the news, but you always do a press release and like say a little prayer and maybe it gets picked up, maybe it doesn't.
But it'll
Um,
be on our both those websites. And
Okay.
those of you who are on the CEDP listserv or the Tide Chip listserv, I suppose also we'll send out an email with it as well.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sandy, did you have a question or were you?
Yes, I did. Um, so I'm curious about if somebody does actually apply for an expungement and does the paperwork and pays the fee, is that process as slow as the automatic ones?
Um, so the automatic ones, so take for instance, like there's a whole slew of misdemeanors where if you are convicted of the misdemeanor, 5 years passes and you have nothing else that's come up and you've completed the sentence and paid all your fines and fees, that's a condition, by the way, then you are eligible for an expungement. And so it could take 91 years for you to get an automatic
Right.
expungement. It could happen the next month.
Oh,
They have not been public about how they're prioritizing which cases they're starting with. So we also don't have any idea if someone just became eligible or if it's 90 years old. We don't know when. But so that there's a huge range of when that expungement could come through. If you do it's called mandatory expungement, if you do the application process, and there's some other forms of expungement, by the way, like discretionary expungements and pardons, where you have to do an application. It's never going to be automatic because it actually involves a judge thinking about whether it's the right thing to do. But for those mandatory expungements, it's going to take at least like a couple months because you actually do a background check. So you have to like go and get fingerprinted, then wait for your background check results to come back, and that's $75 to do that process. Then when you get that, you get an application, you get a thing saying you're eligible for an expungement. Fill out this application and send us another check. And then you send that, and then you actually don't get notified that the expungement happened. So I'll say I often advised clients when they were eligible for these expungements, and it was before Clean Slate had started. So I would usually advise clients, hopefully you'll get an automated expungement at this date. But if not, you can do this process. Or if you have a case discharged in your favor, you're also eligible for an expungement. I think this is something that like a lot of the public doesn't realize, including people who have been arrested, that your arrest record is a part of your record that employers can get and whatnot. And so, if you want to really ruin someone's life, accuse them of a sex crime. You need
mm,
very little physical evidence for the initial accusation. And even if it's immediately dropped, that arrest is still on there and they have to get it expunged. Or every time they apply for a job or housing, they look like a sex offender. So there's it's like um, even cases that are discharged in your favor, if it's like in the interest of justice, they had no evidence, it's on there until it's expunged. Um, but so, I would often, when I had a case that was resolved in the favor of the client, tell them, get an expungement. Here's the process. Go start it now. And then I would encourage them, call me in 6 months to check that it happened. Because when I was a public defender, I could just run their diligence and check that it was on there if they were a client. Um, if you don't have an attorney that can do that for you, you have to pay the $75 again to get another background check. So, another thing that would be great to change. For a lot of reasons, people need access to their records. If you want to check that an expungement went through, but also actually in the immigration context, people often need access to their criminal records in order to apply for certain kinds of immigration relief. And the cost can be prohibitive for people.
One of the things that we've talked about before with the Peace and Justice Work Group is the fact that many people who are trying to restart their lives, whether they're coming out of homelessness or prison or whatever else, one of the first barriers is having a state ID, which again, as we've talked about before, costs money to get. And we had talked before, and Kim, I don't know if you're still listening or not, but I know you had shared with us how many thousands of dollars the Friendship House spends each year to help clients get those state IDs that are so very necessary. And recently, in the Ex-Prisoner Lobby Day planning meeting, and Tanya, you can speak to this as well, there was talk again about how crazy and stupid it is that folks get released from prison without that state ID that is so necessary for them to access any state services or do any of the things that they need to do. They don't have that ID. And wouldn't it make more sense if there was a law requiring them to issue that ID at the time that they were being released so that they had it in their hands when they were released from prison? And everyone at that ex-prisoner lobby day was saying, yes, wouldn't that be such a great thing if there was a law requiring that? And thinking back to when the Peace and Justice Work Group talked about the problem with Friendship House, wouldn't it be great if nonprofits like Friendship House could help their clients get those state IDs for free without having to pay for them? Wouldn't that be a wonderful piece of legislation? And everyone's like, yes, yes, that's a great, we should prioritize that. That's a really important thing. And then it was, okay, which one of the organizations in the room has time to take that on and drive it forward? And everyone kind of looked at each other. So I said, well, I remember that Westminster's Peace and Justice Work Group had talked about we've spent a lot of years now, trying to support other organizations when they take the lead on advocating for a new piece of legislation. Is it time that we, try our hand at taking the lead and developing a piece of legislation to move forward? And might this be the thing? State IDs. And might the Peace and Justice Work Group want to take that forward and, you know, start with talking with impacted people to find out exactly what the need is? Um, Putting that together, finding a legislator that would want to be the prime sponsor and work on it with us and get it drafted and go through those steps to push through a piece of legislation like that. So just throwing that out there.
Hmm.
Kim?
Kim, I guess is gone.
I would love to be part of something like that. I won't have a lot of time to push through or create legislation, but I have ideas. And I think one of the things I'd love to see our state do is make IDs readily available virtually. Because whenever you have something that's paper, you're going to lose it. And if we can ensure that there's some way that people can have something virtual, and I'm sure there's the technology to make it authentic, like it's out there, and a lot of folks who are unhoused do have phones, and they're usually ones that are considered the smartphones. So that's what I would like to see, is have virtual ones, and then maybe go so far as to have organizations like Friendship House have a way to then hold some of those electronically as well. So I think there's options, but it is ridiculous to me that something as simple in our world as a state ID or a birth certificate is literally what is keeping someone unhoused.
That's a great idea.
I think there might be some enthusiasm bubbling. So perhaps
Do
it
I
just
see
it
folks on the
is
screen who would like to work on that?
I'll say, so the CDP got started through Network Delaware. And I don't know if Lynn's already like done the plug for this, but when Network Delaware's CDP was started not long after Network Delaware had started. And they're really trying to move back to like their original roots of supporting issue campaigns. And I know I had actually recently, like earlier tonight, had been texting with Sasha. They're doing like a change agent academy, and they always have trainings like this where
Mhm.
it's about giving people the tools. If you have something you're passionate about and you want to do something like pass a bill or talk to your legislator, but you haven't done that before, it's about teaching those skills. And so that might be a great resource if there are folks here who want to take the lead on this issue. I think it's like next month kind of thing. So
I think I saw March as when it
okay.
might start. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's not, you could do that and then do the bill and you'd have the training and then you could just do it. And I'll also say, like, I'm happy to help support. Tide Shift is happy to support. But if it's Tide Shift leading the ID card, it can't be until at least next year. Because we're doing too many things. Um, but would love to support and it's really, really needed. It's really, really needed. And Kim, I love that idea of virtual. And that could really lower the fiscal note too, potentially.
so so I'm going to put this up, but um, my husband Bob keeps reminding me about it. Little post-it note. No, oh, you can't see. It says, "Stop me before I volunteer again." And
But
I'm
you're
not,
going to ignore that,
and I'm not
right?
supposed to. And I keep saying that I won't. And Bob says, "Uh-huh." Until anyway, if any of you here on this conversation would like to have a little more dialogue about the need, about the opportunity, about the possibility, not asking you to commit to a task force or a 5-year whatever, but think that this is a worthwhile venture to move forward. Let's just get together and have a conversation about what might happen. Um, Not asking for a leader, not asking for a huge commitment, but if you think that this is important to people in our community for any one of a number of reasons and would like to participate in just a one shot, how might we move forward? Raise your hand. Jane, Mike, Sandy, Lyle, Anya. Wonderful. We will put something together and explore what some next steps might be. Oh, and Kim, that would be delightful. And we can figure out a way to utilize Network Delaware, to utilize Meryem and Lynn's extraordinary knowledge and experience with the legislative system, and just see if there isn't a way to move this forward. It makes such sense. And the current system is so broken and so wrong, and puts this little tiny thing as an enormous obstacle in people reclaiming their lives and being able to move forward. So let's at least talk about what might be possible and how we could move forward. Shame on you, Lynn. I'm going to tell Bob that this is your fault.
Take the blame. I'll take the blame for this one.
All right. All right. I will
I'll
be,
also join you in the first meeting.
all right. I'll be in touch. Great. Thank you. Lyle.
Yeah, is this meeting about getting a state ID or getting expungement or both?
This is specifically the state ID.
Okay,
Yeah, this is
thank
the
you.
ID. Yep. It's yes.
Okay.
Expungement piece clearly needs work. It's a big deal. And I'm thinking there are others who may be better better positioned and better prepared to take.
Well, knowing that you guys are interested in that particular issue, though, since we do have some of us that are starting to meet regularly on that, we will put our heads together and think about how we can leverage folks from the community who are ready to make a fuss about it.
And I'll
Um,
say I put my email in the chat. If there's anything we've talked about, expungement, any of it, that you want to get more involved with, shoot me an email and I'll plug you into whatever the, right place is. Because yeah, it I think there are gonna be a lot of opportunities to get involved. And with all of these things, really with all the things we're working on, it needs public pressure. It needs people to feel outraged. And so yeah, um, we'd welcome all voices.
I'll also just add the one topic in criminal justice reform that we're also helping with, but not taking the lead on, is the probation reform effort. ACLU is taking the lead on that, but we partner with them. And it again is something that is so badly needed and something that needs more public outrage to help move it along as well. So I'll just plant the seed for that because it's something else that needs people to come out and advocate for those changes.
And they're currently working on a bill which hopefully would be introduced this year. That would at least the main thing that I see that it would do, and the part that I care the most about is currently I don't have exact statistics, but my guess is the majority, just based on what I've seen come through, of violations of probation are for substance abuse. It might not be a majority. It's a huge amount is substance abuse. It is people testing positive on the screens they're made to do. And right now, every single person on probation, no matter why they're on probation, has a condition of probation that they have to take. They have to be not using any drugs or alcohol, and they get randomly screened, regularly screened, in fact, for drug usage. Again, even if they have no history of a drug problem and their crimes were unrelated to drug use, they get screened. And the screening itself is really invasive. It's like peeing in front of someone. Um, so it's a little traumatic. And but then when people do have a substance abuse problem and they test positive, the result in a lot of cases is they go to prison. And so I think that one of the biggest changes here is having a framework for trying other things first. And that prison is not substance abuse treatment. Prison does not solve people's addiction problems. And that what people need is treatment, not incarceration, is what I at least see as the biggest change. Because in the current system, so many people are going to prison when they have a substance abuse problem on probation.
And that would significantly reduce our recidivism rate because our recidivism rate is largely driven not by people committing new crimes, but by people going back to prison for a technical violation, meaning they broke the
Of their
rules of their probation. So it
probation.
wasn't a new crime, but they broke the rules of their probation. And one of the rules being a simple, drug and alcohol screen, even if what their original crime had nothing to do with drugs or alcohol.
So many opportunities, so many inequities. It just, but I will say, I commented before that I'm in a state of constant public outrage. Uh, but there's public outrage when there's nothing you can do about the issue, right? You're just outraged and there you are. But we're talking about things that there is something we can do about it. And that's different. And
Yeah.
I also think it helps us regain some sense, not of control, but of engagement, involvement, purpose, meaning. And I think we're in need of that. Certainly speaking for myself, I am. So I think there's some wonderful opportunities to be outraged and drive positive change. So thank you, Meryem. Thank you, Lynn, for the work that you do that is accomplishing that. It's extraordinary. And you haven't been around for all that long, but you're making your presence known, and you're having a positive effect, and we are so grateful.
Well, thank you so much for having us here. It's really fun talking to this group. You guys are you're so supportive, and ask such good questions. It's really great being in this group, and I really wholeheartedly agree with what you said, Sue. Not to get political, but it feels like we're living in a world where sometimes there are things happening that are just so outside our control and they're so awful. And I just personally do really get a lot of satisfaction from this work. And even when I was doing it as a volunteer, it's somewhere to put the rage, where we can really change things. And even if there's all this awful happening out in the larger world, we can make our state better and our communities better and our neighbors' lives better and our lives better. And it does feel it's nice to like know that there's something we can do. And theoretically, if everyone's doing this all around the country, maybe our whole country will be better. Um, but at least in our small community, there we can make it better.
Thank you.
And
Mike,
so
you
do you
want to
want
say
to do
a
a
word?
plug for next week?
Yeah, Mike, you want to say a word or two about next week?
Sure, sure. So next week we're having John Flynn, who's actually an ex singer, but he's over the last 15 years or so, he's been working on New Beginnings Next Step. And basically, what that is individuals who are incarcerated, and they're there to support them and get them prepping to go when they get outside of prison to um, have expertise and opportunities of how they can kind of find jobs. So it's difficult, as we can say, even from what we heard this evening. Um, but they also end up going back too because of certain reasons. And the next steps process is they'll go back and get them to find opportunities where they can, you know, find jobs, live somewhere. And we're going to have not only Jim there, John there, I mean, he's going to bring some of his people that have been incarcerated, join us in a meeting. So we look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
And John is going to forgive you for saying that he used to be a singer.
Yeah.
Because Meryem says
He
he
still
still
gets
is.
around that a little bit. He
Still is.
still does that a little bit.
He still sings. He still
Yeah,
performs.
he still sings. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, wonderful. So we'll hope to see you next Thursday evening, 7 p.m. on Zoom. In the meantime, stay warm, stay safe. We'll see what happens with the weather
Yes, ma'am.
situation, but be well, and we hope to see you next Thursday.
Very
Take
good.
Thank
care.
you, Meryem. Thank you,
Thank you.
Lynn.
Marion.
Good night.
Good night.